Susan Gardner here for Municipal World. We're at the 2019 annual conference for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities here in beautiful Quebec City. Joining me in the Municipal World Media Centre is Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi.
I think of Quebec as one of my other homes. I was a student at Laval University in a French immersion program, so it's always nice to be back here. And if you were to go to City Hall, Hotel de Ville, you would see permanently in front of Quebec City Hall a Calgary flag.
Really?
Because Calgary and Quebec City are sister cities.
I did not know that.
Normally you don't have sister cities in your own country, but it was important to create ties back in the day, 50-odd years ago, between English-speaking and French-speaking Canada. So we have a beautiful relationship. We come up to the Winter Carnival every year. They come up to the Calgary Stampede. And so it is really great to be here in the summer.
That's amazing. I did not know that. I bet a lot of folks didn't know that.
A lot of people have been walking up to me going, why is there a Calgary flag on the City Hall?
That's awesome.
That is why.
Okay, I'm going to have to walk out and check that out later. We're in the run-up to the federal election.
So I heard.
Yes, it's a little bit of a thing. And the Prime Minister and Conservative leader Andrew Scheer were here today.
Jed meets here tomorrow, I believe.
Yes, and
Elizabeth on Sunday.
Yes, so they're all kind of making their pitch. You met with the Prime Minister to talk about what Calgary wants.
I did. I met with the Prime Minister. I had a few short minutes with Andrew Scheer as well. We'll talk when he's in Calgary next. So it's really important right now for municipalities to make themselves heard and to be really clear about what some of the challenges we're having are and how the federal government can work with us to help. And what's been really interesting is, I've been in this gig for 8.5 years now. And over the last 5 years or so, FCM has really had a shift in how it communicates with government. And I have to say it's had some really great victories for municipalities. The challenge that we always have is that the federal government sometimes thinks of municipalities as, well, that's a provincial thing. They're creatures of the province. I got to deal with the provinces to deal with them. And it doesn't work. So what was fascinating about the speeches today is both Prime Minister Trudeau and Mr. Scheer complained about the same thing about each other. So Prime Minister Trudeau started by reminding us that when he took office in 2015, no federal infrastructure funding had flowed for a couple of years. I still remember Minister LaBelle at the time, the Conservative minister, coming to FCM. Actually, he came to the big city mayors in 2014 in January and said, we're going to introduce a new Building Canada fund in the budget, and we're going to make sure that you don't lose the construction season in 14. And no real money flowed from that until after the change in government in 16. So Prime Minister Trudeau rightly pointed out, we had to get the Harper money out the door. And then Mr. Scheer said, but the Trudeau money hasn't gone out the door. So this is actually a very significant problem. And because they promise all this infrastructure and they can't actually spend the money, which is ridiculous. And so one thing that happened in this year's budget is that they did this, they called it the infrastructure top-up. And they used the mechanism of the gas tax to get money directly to municipalities and bypass the provinces. So for Calgary this year, that meant $68 million, which we could just put to work right away. So one of FCM's big asks is make that permanent. Use the gas tax funding so we don't get the money stuck in Ottawa or stuck in our provincial capitals and it doesn't get out. So of course I talked to the Prime Minister about that. We had a good conversation about some of the economic challenges in Calgary right now. As you know, the country is doing very well economically. About 70% of the country is firing on all cylinders. We've had the best jobs reports in history and so on. And of the remaining 30%, there are some parts of the country where there have always been persistent challenges and there'll continue to be challenges. But the real problem is Alberta. And specifically, the real problem is Calgary. So Calgary has disassociated itself from the national economy. Now, we're very used to being disassociated from the national economy in a good way.
Yeah.
We've always had the lowest unemployment rate in the country. We're kind of secretly proud, like the older brother, of carrying the rest of the country. We'll never admit it. We're kind of secretly proud of it. But what's happened now, of course, is Calgary has gone from having the lowest unemployment rate in the country to the highest in a very short period of time. We've gone from having 0% downtown vacancy to 25% in a very short period of time. And we'll probably talk about property taxes and what that means for that in a minute. But it's really important for the whole nation that the city of Calgary be firing on all cylinders, because without that, you lose incredible revenue to the federal government. It's impossible for the federal government to balance its budget. And quite frankly, you've got a big chunk of the Canadian economy not working. And so the Prime Minister and I have spoken about this many times, and I reiterated the need for every party running in this election to have an Alberta strategy, not a political strategy, an economic strategy, and very specifically a Calgary strategy. And of course, I'll make the same arguments, Mr. Scheer. I'll make the same arguments, Mr. Singh. I'll make the same arguments, Ms. May. I only got one horse. I'm not wearing much purple today because I'm wearing this T-shirt, but I wear purple every day. I think there's a purple tie under there.
There certainly is.
Because it's red and blue. Because at the municipal order of government, parties don't matter, partisanship doesn't matter, getting stuff done matters. And so my only horse in this race is Calgary, and I will continue to fight for Calgary and for other cities in the country.
So the economic downturn, is this different than what has been experienced in Alberta in the past?
Yeah, in both good ways and bad ways. So we're used to a cyclical economy.
Yeah.
But what used to happen is if the price of oil went down, the moving trucks went out of Calgary. So the population would go down, the city could almost catch a breath.
Yeah.
And that hasn't happened this time. So our population growth has continued to be very high, extraordinarily high, in migration from the rest of Canada, immigration from the rest of the world, because people see the quality of life and they want to be there even if the economy has slowed down. As I sometimes joke, our peaks are most people's mountains. I should say our peaks are most people's valleys.
Yes.
And so, the economists last year called Calgary the best city in the Western Hemisphere in which to live. In fact, 3 cities in Canada made the top 10. We should be proud of that. And so people are coming anyway for the quality of life, which is great. But it also means that we have different challenges in maintaining the growth of the city, maintaining the infrastructure and the need to serve the citizens in that way with much less revenue.
Okay.
And so this economic downturn has been lower for longer. Geez, I should get my words in the right order. Has been lower for longer than most. And the very fragile economic recovery in which we find ourselves has been far too much for my liking, a jobless recovery.
Yeah.
And so people aren't really feeling that recovery.
Yeah.
And of course, for the municipal world people, we can get into the very technical issue, which is a big deal, of what that's done to our assessment base and the inequities and injustices it's created in our property taxes.
Yeah. So there's been some significant jumps in tax bills in the last little bit.
For some people. This is the confusing part. So our overall rate of taxation remains very low, both residential and non-residential. The lowest in Canada of any major city on the residential side, second or third lowest on the non-residential side.
Yeah.
The problem is, and again, municipal world people are sophisticated, so you'll get this. Because that vacancy rate in the downtown went up, the assessment values in the downtown dropped off a cliff. So as a result, because the assessment in the downtown went down so much, those downtown businesses got huge tax breaks, 75% cut, 80% cut. But because we have to charge the same rate to everyone, it means that if your assessment stayed the same or went up slightly, your bill went up massively to make up for the downfall. So a bunch of people got huge cuts, a bunch of people got huge increases. So it's actually a distribution problem.
Yeah.
It really is about the inequity of the property tax. It is the worst way to tax people, and it's particularly a terrible way to tax business. It doesn't matter if you had a good year or a bad year. There's nothing you can do to avoid the tax. You're stuck with it. And so we've gotten this horrible situation where these businesses in the downtown got huge property tax reductions, but also huge revenue declines because there are fewer people working downtown. Right. And those businesses outside of downtown mostly got huge increases, which is totally unfair. How can they manage that? You're a auto body shop or a restaurant, and suddenly your taxes have doubled. And so the city has really worked hard. The good news is that we are one of those rare governments that is the ant in the story of the ant and the grasshopper. We managed to put some money away in the good times that we were able to deploy in the bad times. So we deployed over $150 million to help buffer those businesses from these massive increases. Well, we can't do it forever. Yeah. I'm going to run out of money at some point. Yeah. And so ultimately, there's only 3 real solutions here. You refill the downtown, which we're working hard on. you help people adjust to a new normal taxation level, which I'd rather avoid,
Yeah.
or you actually engage with the provincial government in a real meaningful conversation about tax reform. And so maybe there's an opportunity now to do that. The other funny thing about it is that the provincial government, we have a new provincial government, the previous one and the new one have been saying, well, this is Calgary's problem, fix it. But of course, the property tax is a municipal and a provincial tax. So 40% of it goes straight to the province. We're just the tax collector for it. And they seem to have forgotten that, or they seem to just be pocketing the money and making it our problem.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, we got to get to a better solution.
Okay. So, do you have thoughts around what that solution looks like? I mean, what is the restructuring?
Well, so in the short term, we'll keep buffering that as best we can. But like I say, I'm going to run out of money, and I can't do it forever. In the long term, question is any province brave enough to actually say the property tax stinks? In some ways, it's very good for government because it's very stable. Unlike income tax or corporate taxes or sales taxes, it doesn't vary at all. That's also the bad news because people have to pay it. No matter whether they've had a good year or a bad year, there's no deductions you can take against it. You just got to pay it. And so could we move to a world, hypothetically, where we share the business income tax with cities rather than rely so much on the property tax? And for every point that you get on the income tax, you got to reduce your property taxes. I think most cities would jump at that opportunity. So the question is any province brave enough to have that conversation? And I'm willing to have it anytime, any place.
Okay. So one of the things that you're here in Quebec City to talk about with your brothers and sisters in municipal government is energy.
So yeah, I've got my little French t-shirt here.
Soutenons l'énergie canadienne.
Soutenons l'énergie canadienne. Support Canadian energy. And so there is a real opportunity for us to get beyond the divisiveness and rhetoric that has plagued our discussions about energy and the environment. And yet again, the municipal order of government is where you want to do that. It's where climate change hits us. It's where we understand. But it's also where we have an absolute need to ensure prosperity for our citizens. So we have no choice at the municipal order of government but to believe that safeguarding the environment and building the economy work together. We don't have the luxury of rhetoric to talk about one versus the other because the rubber obviously hits the road with us.
Yes.
And so we're really finding there's a huge support among municipal politicians. Of course, there's pockets of people who are anti-pipeline and pockets of people who are just all about the economy and don't believe in climate change. But the municipal order of government, as I say, you don't have that luxury. And so this is a real good opportunity, this campaign, for resource communities across the country, whether in oil and gas or mining or forestry or agriculture, to really come together and talk about what brings us together rather than what is splitting us apart. And frankly, our provinces and federal government could use a little more of that right now.
A little more collaboration and
a little more solutions orientation, right?
Yeah.
No other country in the world would allow itself to get so hung up on one pipeline that they actually cripple their major industry and a good chunk of their economy. And yet we managed that, didn't we? And so, of course I have a point of view on this. I don't believe that a 3-foot wide pipeline can carry the sins of the carbon economy. I believe that Canada needs to strive towards energy independence and reducing our reliance on foreign oil. I think that we made a foolish mistake by having only one customer for our most important export, who's now our biggest competitor. But those kinds of conversations are actually conversations you can have human being to human being. Mm-hmm. I laugh when I see the Premier of British Columbia say, we got to reduce gas prices in BC. There's only one way to do that, right? And it's about increasing supply. So we've got to be able to get to that conversation. And luckily, municipal politicians have always been adept at getting beyond the partisanship and just having a real conversation.
And that's what you're hoping is going to happen here.
And I think it is happening, yeah.
Okay, that's great. I want to tell you that, I've had the opportunity to go to Calgary quite a few times in the last few years for different conferences. And I feel like every time I go there, Calgary seems to be getting better. The development, the vibe on the street, the cultural energy.
It's very kind of you to say. We've been working very hard on investing in the community, investing in public infrastructure, building a better place. And as I say, we're very proud of our quality of life. Really, one of the best in the world. When we came in fourth on the best in North America, fourth in the world on that list, I went and looked and went, all right, how do I get from fourth to first? The answer is that we ranked 100% in every quality of life indicator by The Economist, except for one, the weather. 97%. Okay, I'll take it.
Yes.
I'm not sure I can change that. But,
No.
we've invested in real public infrastructure. If you haven't seen our new central library, oh my God, come see it.
I toured your central library just before it opened.
Oh, you got to see it now that it's open. It makes me happy every day. It's a crucible of democracy. Everybody from every age, every income level, every ethnicity is sitting in there, and everybody's got a smile on their face. And for me, that's what democracy is about. So we've made the largest investments in public transit in history. We've invested in social infrastructure like libraries and fire halls and parks and arenas. But while doing so very fiscally responsible, right? Ant and grasshopper. At the same time, we've also been really focused on inclusiveness, on ensuring everyone has opportunity, on reconciliation with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. If only the economy hadn't gone in the tank, we'd be paradise on earth. I think we still are paradise on earth. But, I warmly invite people to come and see what it looks like when you transform a city and when you transform city government. It's something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, the library you mentioned, it's also a stunning piece of architecture, and it's got a great feeling throughout it.
So let me tell you a story. You saw it before I did, because I had refused all opportunities to actually go on a tour, because I wanted to walk in there for the first time at the moment citizens walked in. And by the way, it was on time and way under budget, so that was good. So I wanted to be raw and real when I opened it about my own reactions to it. Yeah. This was a terrible mistake.
Was it?
Terrible mistake. Because I walked in and I was so overwhelmed. I didn't even know what to say. I threw out my speech, and I was standing on the stairs, and there was a lineup of people around the block and around the corner, and I wouldn't start. So I stood there and I said, I'm supposed to start and open this place. I'm not doing it, because I want every one of those citizens to get in here first. So all of you who are in here, I know you've got a great view of me and everyone wants to see me, but I want you to move into the building, move around me, move behind me, because every one of those people needs to be in here. And so they all came in. And I know what I wanted to say. I don't know if I actually said it because I was so overwhelmed, but I know what I wanted to say. And I wanted to say, people keep asking me why this place has to be so beautiful. And there's a reason. And the reason is that everybody deserves beauty. Everybody deserves dignity. And my dream for this place is actually something that happens every day, which is someone who has been living in poverty, or someone who has just arrived in Canada from a refugee camp in conditions that we can't even imagine, walks into that place and sees how beautiful it is and asks the question, is this for me? And the answer is, yeah, it's for you, because it's for everybody. It's for everybody. And everybody deserves a place like this. And I tell you, it changes lives every single day. That's why municipal government matters, because that is our opportunity, and that's something we got to capitalize on every day.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You've been doing this gig for a while now.
8.5 years, yeah.
So have you learned some lessons along the way? Do you have some reflections on leadership?
If you ask my city council, they say he's got a lot of lessons left to learn. I tell you. Municipal government is amazing. And one of the things I love about FCM, about the annual conference, is because every province is on a different cycle, I always meet people who are brand new. So this time I get to meet people from Ontario and from British Columbia who've just been elected. And I always give them the exact same piece of advice. And the advice is, be the best one-term councillor, the best one-term mayor you can be. Think about the fact that you've been given 3 or 4 years as a gift. You've been given this extraordinary gift, and you have to make the most of every day, because you get to wake up every morning and know you got a chance to make the community better. And at the end of that, if you want to run for re-election, tell people what you did. And that advice is usually pretty well taken. And I still think of that every day, 8.5 years in. I think of every day as a humbling gift that has been given to me by the people of Calgary who've entrusted me just for a second with their hopes and their dreams and their fears for their city and their kids and what they want to build. And I think that's pretty damn special. And so I hope that people are still inspired to get into public life, to get in, especially into municipal government. It's different, right? When I go to a council meeting, unlike the Prime Minister or the Premier, I go into the council meeting and I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea whether this will pass or fail or what kind of amendments will come or what the debate will be on this. And I've got 14 brilliant councillors from all walks of life. And anything I want to do, I got to convince at least 7 of them to agree with me. And if you read the newspaper, it sounds like we're at each other's throats all the time. In fact, the vast majority of what we do passes unanimously, or it passes 14-1. We fight about the little things and we agree on the big things by and large. And I love that. I love that I've got people from every corner or every part of the political spectrum, people from very, very different backgrounds. I got a cop and someone who drove a forklift and a dress designer and 3 people with graduate degrees in urban planning and urban design. So it's really all over the map. But what we share in common is we all get to live here and we all get to love this community. And when I remember that and get myself beyond the pettiness and the arguments and the who's winning the political race today, and God help us, the social media, that's when we can really do great things for people. And I think that's what really matters.
I agree. You mentioned social media, and I want to close with that because we have so many issues today around social media. We've talked to so many people around the issues in communities, and it's kind of fueled by social media. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when I was first elected in 2010, I used social media a lot. I've been on many, listicles on BuzzFeed about the use of Twitter and so on and so on and so on. And, I hardly use it anymore.
Is that right?
Hardly.
Tell me why.
Like today I live tweeted Andrew Scheer and Justin Trudeau's speeches, and that was the first time I've been on Twitter in ages.
Really?
So it used to be for the first 6.5, 7 years of my career, in this career, I was the only one who had the Twitter password. That was me. And that was me engaging with citizens, having conversations, answering questions.
In the midst of disaster sometimes.
In the midst of disaster, communicating with people, certainly after the floods of 2013. Yeah. But it's gotten so nasty. And it's not just that it's nasty about me. If I'm on there, I just use it as a broadcast medium now. Famously, my campaign manager back in 2010 said, while everyone else uses social media as a television, as in we're broadcasting, we use it as a telephone, as in we're having a conversation. And nowadays, you look at my Twitter and it's Green Card Summer Collection starts next week. It's just information.
Yeah.
And it used to be that if I said Green Card Summer Collection starts next week, and a citizen would say to me, hey, can you explain to me what the Green Card program is really about? We could get in a dialogue and talk about organics and recycling and all that stuff. But nowadays, if someone asks me that question, they're going to get 1 million people replying to them and me saying, oh, it's just a socialist plot. I don't believe in climate change, blah, blah, libtards, blah, 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 blah. And that's just not worth the abuse. Not for me, but for those other people. I think it's horrible what we've allowed the social media to become, because it's robbed us of the opportunity to have those authentic conversations with people. And so I'm sure a solution will come. And I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Currently, I'm working on a Pinterest board. I don't really understand Pinterest at all, but it's going to be about things you love about your city and giving people the opportunity to post, instead of recipes, their favorite piece of public art or their favorite walk or their favorite park in the community, and really try and get a sense of bringing that positivity back into the conversation on social media.
That's a great strategy. Naheed Nenshi, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Susan Gardner here for Municipal World with Calgary's Mayor Nenshi. We share your stories.